The sky split open with a violet streak, and the streetlight nearest to the crack in reality exploded in a shower of sparks. The humans on the corner froze, mouths open, coffee cups trembling, as a figure dropped with theatrical grace, or maybe just bad timing, into the middle of the street. She shimmered, her skin flickering between teal and gold, and 4 delicate limbs unfolded from her back like an elaborate, slightly impractical cloak. Her eyes, large and iridescent, scanned the chaos she had caused with an expression somewhere between panic and indignation. A small, glowing device on her wrist pulsed violently red, counting down in numbers humans couldn't even comprehend. Zyra, exiled princess of the planet Virilia, had exactly 12 hours to find a mate and conceive an heir, and the universe had been kind enough to deposit her smack in the middle of downtown America at the worst possible moment. She muttered something in a musical, almost tongue-twisting language that made the humans step back uncertainly. Their phones were out, fingers hovering over the record button, as she waved her arms in what she assumed were dramatic gestures of urgency. To the humans, it looked like interpretive dance mixed with mild alien aggression. A man in a suit stepped forward, clearing his throat. Ma'am, are you okay?" Zyra froze. The question was logical, but the translation to her species' biology was horrifying. Did he mean emotional stability? Physical stability? Reproductive readiness? She didn't have time to explain. The clock was ticking. A sudden pang, sharp, urgent, unavoidable, shot through her abdomen. Her countdown device flashed violently, displaying an alarming sequence of symbols that roughly translated to "Air required immediately." She gasped, a sound like wind through glass, and clutched the nearest human object, a trash can. It rattled under her grip, spilling recyclables onto the asphalt. She glanced up at the humans watching her, and realized with dawning horror that her pheromones had already started interacting with Earth's atmosphere. The humans were reacting. One man staggered slightly, a flush creeping across his cheeks. Another tried to discreetly back away but collided with a lamppost, muttering something about bad luck. This was not ideal. Zyra knew she needed a plan, and fast. Earth's species presented a strange combination of unpredictability and potential. Their mating customs were rudimentary but versatile. She had observed their dating rituals from orbit, bars, cafes, and gatherings where humans attempted to charm each other with laughter, food, and confusing noises they called compliments. She could adapt. She had no choice. She flicked a hand and the countdown on her wrist projected a holographic display over the street, numerals spinning and pulsing like a living heartbeat. Humans gasped, some stumbled back, but one bold woman with a rainbow scarf squinted at the lights. "Is this, like, an interactive art installation?" she asked cautiously. Zyra's lips curled into the nearest approximation of a polite smile. "No. This is your participation in essential reproduction," she said. She had no idea if they would understand her words, but tone mattered, and the urgency was clear. Humans murmured, eyebrows knitting. One man whispered, "Is this some kind of science experiment?" Zyra blinked twice. Experiment? Close, but not quite. She needed something faster, more chaotic. Something that would draw the entire pool of eligible candidates. She spotted a neon sign across the street. "Singles night tonight." Her mandibles quivered. Perfect. Humans were already gathering for rituals of courtship, and she could hijack the event without them suspecting anything unusual. Her glowing limbs shimmered as she stepped onto the sidewalk, leaving faint trails of sparkling residue. The humans scattered slightly, muttering about fluorescent paint or some kind of performance art, while Zyra scanned the bar's patrons. She needed participants, the desperate, the lonely, the hapless. All would do. Every one of them brought her closer to securing the heir she so desperately needed. Time was slipping through her fingers, and her internal biology was becoming almost comically impatient. The tick of her countdown device was accompanied by a subtle vibration through her chest, a signal that her reproductive urgency was accelerating. Zyra groaned softly, drawing another set of startled looks from passers-by. She had to act, and fast. Speed dating would be her weapon, Earth's awkward customs her allies. She imagined the scene, humans fumbling, misreading her gestures, stepping into the rituals of virilia without ever realizing it. Comedy would ensue, yes, but necessity demanded action over elegance. She raised one arm dramatically and muttered another series of alien sounds, pointing vaguely at the bar. A few humans, brave, stupid, or perhaps intoxicated, followed her gaze. "We go there?" one asked. Zaira inclined her head in the nearest human approximation of affirmation. By the end of the street, she had assembled a small following of confused volunteers. Some wondered if she was hiring a new cult leader, others if she was a cosplayer gone too far. Zaira didn't care. Every step toward the bar was a step toward saving her planet's lineage, and perhaps, if the humans were cooperative, a step toward discovering that Earthlings were capable of more than anyone, including herself, had anticipated. As she led the parade down the street, her glowing limbs brushing past neon signs and startled pedestrians, she allowed herself a small smirk. This was going to be chaotic. This was going to be ridiculous. And if the stars aligned correctly, or incorrectly, in the comedic sense, she might just succeed in producing an heir by dawn, even if it meant dragging a collection of hapless humans through rituals they couldn't possibly understand. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she allowed a tiny flicker of curiosity. Perhaps Earthlings were exactly the kind of unpredictable, absurdly resourceful creatures her species needed after all. The bar smelled of cheap beer, stale popcorn, and an unmistakable hint of desperation. Zaira's eyes scanned the room, glowing faintly, as humans milled about, clutching drinks and awkwardly scanning name tags. Their species had no idea what awaited them. She flicked her wrist, and the holographic countdown hovered above the room, casting eerie colors on the walls. The humans froze. Some whispered nervously. Some laughed nervously. Zaira ignored them. Their confusion was a sign that the energy was right. She clapped her hands, or at least, she attempted the human approximation, and the small crowd turned toward her. "Welcome," she intoned, her voice musical, vibrating subtly against their eardrums in a way that made several people shiver. "Tonight you will participate in a ritual of the utmost importance. To some of you, it may feel like dating. To me, it is survival." A man in a Hawaiian shirt blinked. Is this like a themed speed dating thing? Because I'm ready for that. Totally normal." Zaira's mandibles clicked in what humans might call exasperation. "No. Not themed. Life or death. Mate selection. Now." The humans exchanged glances. One whispered to another, "I think she's serious." Also, glowing arms. "That can't be legal." Another muttered, "Maybe it's a bachelor party gone wrong?" Zaira ignored the commentary and motioned them towards small tables arranged in a chaotic grid. She produced a set of glowing, alien instruments that hummed ominously. "These will help you determine compatibility," she explained. "They will read your pheromones, your heartbeat, your other qualities." The humans looked at each other uncertainly, unsure if they should touch the devices or flee. One bold soul, a tall, gangly man with glasses, tentatively placed his hand on a pulsing orb. Immediately, a faint pink mist surrounded him, and his hair started to shimmer. He yelped and tried to pull back, sending the orb spinning into another participant's drink. Laughter erupted. Zaira's eyes flickered between irritation and fascination. Humans were absurd. She began the first round, instructing each human to attempt the eye synchronization. Humans stared into each other's eyes with forced intensity. Some giggled nervously. Some looked away. Zaira's alien senses flared. A few participants' bodies reacted to her presence, glowing faintly or stiffening in odd ways. She could feel her biological clock responding to proximity. The countdown ticked louder in her chest. She muttered under her breath, a low hum, as the tall man in a suit accidentally leaned too close, his glasses fogging up. "This is harder than I thought," she admitted to herself, though her voice was steady. "They are unpredictable, yet potentially viable." One participant, a man who had spent 10 minutes arranging his hair in what he called Maximal attractiveness. Tried to kiss Zyra on the cheek as part of his interpretation of the ritual. She recoiled with elegance, a shimmer of starlight trailing from her fingertips. The man staggered back, bumping into another participant, causing a small chain reaction that knocked over a table of snacks. Popcorn rained down like confetti. Zyra blinked, unimpressed, but internally, her pulse quickened. Earthling's chaos was strangely effective. The pheromone sprays came next. Zyra explained that inhaling the mist would allow humans to sync their mating instincts with her own. Several volunteers hesitated, sniffing cautiously. One man sneezed violently, another inhaled too deeply and glowed a shocking shade of neon green, eliciting a mix of horror and laughter from the crowd. Zyra raised her hand, suppressing a chuckle. Comedy and necessity were now intertwined. The clock ticked mercilessly toward dawn. Then came the dance of energy exchange. Zyra floated slightly above the ground, demonstrating movements that were elegant, absurd, and slightly terrifying. Humans tried to mimic her, some flailing violently, others stepping on each other's toes. A woman with an oversized scarf accidentally wrapped herself around a man, spinning them both into a pile of chairs. Zyra's glowing limbs hummed with anticipation. Some human touches were closer to the required rhythm than she would have expected. Through all this, one man stood out. Not because he was graceful, he was awkward, tripping over his own feet, but because he seemed genuinely interested in understanding, in participating, not mocking. He inhaled the pheromones carefully, mimicked the energy exchange with what little coordination he had, and smiled nervously when Zyra's eyes met his. A small ripple of warmth spread through her chest. Perhaps this human was the one to fulfill the prophecy. The other participants, meanwhile, continued to fumble spectacularly. The bartender spilled drinks, a couple of humans accidentally locked themselves in the bathroom, and the glowing neon green man kept bumping into furniture. Zyra's mouth twitched in the closest thing to a human expression of amusement. The situation was absurd, ridiculous, chaotic, and exactly what her species needed. By the end of the hour, the humans were exhausted, drenched in spilled drinks and alien pheromone mist, but the ritual had progressed. Zyra's countdown projected above the room glowed ominously. Only a few hours remained. One human, the awkward but earnest one, stood slightly apart, catching her gaze with a mixture of fear and curiosity. He didn't understand what he had done correctly. He didn't need to. His accidental alignment with her alien rhythm was enough. Zyra felt the tension tighten like a spring in her chest. The air must be secured by dawn, and she was perilously close. The bar was a mess. Humans were muttering, laughing nervously, wiping spilled drinks off themselves. Zyra hovered in the center, glowing faintly, her heart, or whatever the alien equivalent was, beating faster. Tonight had been chaos incarnate, but somewhere in the disaster, she glimpsed hope. Her mission was far from over, but she could feel that her chosen human, the one fumbling, stumbling, but still standing, might just carry her legacy. The bar had descended into full-blown chaos. Chairs were overturned, neon lights flickered in sync with Zyra's glowing limbs, and a faint mist of alien pheromones clung to every surface, making the humans sneeze, cough, or in one case, faint dramatically onto a pool table. Zyra hovered in the center, her multi-limbed silhouette shimmering with urgency, as the countdown on her wrist pulsed louder and faster. Only a few hours remained before dawn, and the pressure weighed on her like the gravity of a collapsing star. Humans were flailing in every direction, trying to comply with her alien mating rituals. One man, certain he understood the energy exchange dance, spun so violently he collided with a tray of drinks, sending cocktails spraying in all directions. Another, a woman with a sparkly headband, accidentally tied herself to a table leg while attempting the psychosynchronous embrace, leaving her dangling awkwardly, kicking her legs. Zyra blinked, almost amused, almost horrified. They were utterly chaotic, completely ill-prepared, yet somehow, alive with potential. The awkward but earnest man, the one she had quietly observed during the last round, remained surprisingly focused. He hadn't laughed at the chaos. He hadn't run away. He had simply mirrored her gestures as best he could, his hands shaking, his forehead glistening with sweat, but his eyes locked on hers with an unflinching curiosity. Zaira felt an unfamiliar flutter, something that wasn't strictly biological necessity. Earthlings were charming in the most infuriatingly inefficient way. She decided to raise the stakes. Her wings, or whatever humans would call them, fanned out, glowing brighter. She released a pulse of pheromones into the room, enough to make anyone unprepared stagger. Humans shrieked, waved their arms, and sneezed dramatically. One man, overwhelmed, turned a luminous shade of pink, his hair floating slightly as if he were under zero gravity. Zaira couldn't help a tiny laugh, a sound like wind chimes caught in a storm. The room was a disaster, but disasters were fertile ground for the unpredictable magic of human adaptability. The countdown ticked mercilessly. Only 2 hours remained. Zaira's internal senses screamed that time was slipping away, that her mission might fail if she didn't intervene. She approached the earnest man, lifting him slightly off the ground with a gentle levitation field. His legs flailed, but he didn't scream. He was too focused on keeping eye contact. You are the closest to proper synchronization," she said in her melodic voice, unsure if he understood, but confident he felt the intensity. His eyebrows knitted. Okay. I think," he stammered. That uncertainty, that accidental perfection, made her pulse spike. Meanwhile, the other humans continued their spectacular failures. The neon green man had somehow levitated himself into a ceiling fan, spinning gently as if auditioning for a circus act. 2 women were tangled in a dramatic scarf-and-chair disaster that resembled modern art more than mating ritual. A bartender had barricaded himself behind a counter, muttering something about alien sex cults, while tossing spilled drinks at anyone who approached. Zaira exhaled, her chest vibrating with alien anticipation. The absurdity of humans was effective. Their chaos was oddly complementary to her highly structured biology. She released another pulse of pheromones, specifically targeted at the earnest man, and he yelped slightly, stumbling but regaining balance immediately. The glow around him intensified. Zaira's body responded in kind, her skin flickering between teal and gold in sharp pulses. Something was happening, something important, and it wasn't just biology. For the first time in centuries, she wondered if she might actually enjoy this process, not just for duty, but for the absurd thrill of it. The other humans, sensing the rising tension, tried desperately to keep up. One man attempted to mimic the holographic eye ritual, but accidentally smashed the projector into a wall, covering a few participants in glowing sparks. Another, attempting to impress Zaira with agility, slipped on spilled liquid and executed an accidental split that earned confused applause. Zaira shook her head, suppressing laughter. Every failure made her pulse stronger, every ridiculous gesture brought her closer to her goal. And then, the countdown dipped below 30 minutes. Zaira's panic flared. She had to act decisively. She swept the room with her gaze, noting the humans' effort, their absurd courage, their chaotic creativity. It was reckless, it was messy, and it was exactly the type of unpredictability her species needed. She reached out, guiding the earnest man into a closer position with subtle psychic nudges, aligning him in a way that would maximize compatibility. His confusion was evident, but he followed her guidance obediently, trusting something he barely understood. She glanced at the others, all fumbled and flustered, yet cheering in their own hapless way. Zaira realized then that the ritual didn't require perfection, just intent, proximity, and a bit of chaos. The universe, in its twisted sense of humor, had chosen humans for their unpredictability, for their flawed but resilient nature. And perhaps, just perhaps, this ridiculous, fumbling human might save her lineage without even realizing it. The first hints of dawn painted the sky in soft pink and gold, though inside the bar it was still chaos incarnate. Humans lay strewn across chairs, tables, and whatever surfaces could be found, blinking through the haze of alien pheromones and spilled drinks. Zaira hovered above the mess, her glowing limbs casting gentle pulses across the room, counting down the final minutes. Her device emitted a shrill, urgent signal, less than 30 seconds. The universe was holding its breath. The earnest human, the one who had managed, by accident and instinct, to align with her alien rhythm, stood trembling, eyes wide, uncertain, but somehow perfectly positioned. Zaira felt her pulse quicken, her body vibrating with the alignment that could secure her lineage. She extended a limb toward him, a subtle invitation, and he, in a combination of panic and instinct, reached back, knocking into her arm. Sparks of light and pheromones flared in the room, coating everyone in a shimmering haze. Humans ducked, sneezed, or shrieked. Zaira barely noticed. The ritual was working, even if it looked absurd to anyone else. Time stretched thin. One misstep, one hesitation, and the prophecy would fail. The human, still unsure of what he was doing, tripped slightly forward, colliding with Zaira in what should have been a disaster. Instead, his accidental embrace triggered the final step of her alien reproductive ritual. A soft hum filled the room, her skin flickering in vivid pulses of teal and gold. The countdown stopped. Silence, then laughter. Humans were laughing, some out of relief, some out of confusion, some because the neon green man had somehow tumbled into a stack of chairs and emerged like a glowing statue. Zaira exhaled, a sound like chimes through a gentle wind, and felt the surge of fulfillment ripple through her. It was done. The heir was conceived. Not through precision, not through elegance, but through pure chaotic luck, guided by a human who had no idea of the cosmic importance of his actions. She looked down at him. He blinked, caught in the afterglow of accidental heroism, and muttered, Did I do it?" Zaira tilted her head, mandibles clicking softly in amusement. "Yes. You did. By accident. But it counts." The bar erupted into applause, or what passed for applause in the context of slightly inebriated humans and one still glowing green man. Zaira allowed herself a small, genuine smile. Her task was complete, her lineage preserved, and somehow, she found herself genuinely charmed by the chaos of Earthlings. They were flawed, fumbling, hilariously unpredictable, but in that unpredictability lay their brilliance. They had saved her mission without even realizing it. That, she decided, was worth a small measure of affection. She drifted closer to the human who had unknowingly fulfilled the prophecy. "You were effective," she murmured, voice soft, tinged with amusement and something unfamiliar, fondness. He swallowed nervously, hair sticking up from his earlier collisions, hands sticky with spilled drinks. I think I got lucky," he said. Zaira blinked, mandibles clicking in a gesture that humans might interpret as a smile. Luck, effort, chaos, it didn't matter. He had succeeded where many had failed. The remaining humans, still untangling themselves from chairs, spilled drinks, and each other, stared in awe at the display. Some attempted to mimic the ritual, inadvertently creating new minor disasters. A man toppled a table while trying to perform the energy exchange. A woman sprayed herself with lingering pheromones and began glowing faintly, and the neon green man was still twitching slightly from last night's mishaps. Zaira's lips twitched in suppressed laughter. It was absurd. It was ridiculous. And yet, it was perfect. A soft warmth settled in her chest as she considered the humans around her. Their flaws, their fumbling attempts, their chaotic brilliance had worked in her favor. Perhaps this was why she found herself fascinated with Earthlings, not despite their messiness, but because of it. She hovered above the crowd, her glow dimming to a gentle shimmer, and considered the next steps, leaving Earth, securing her lineage, perhaps even returning for amusement. She had survived exile, navigated a new world, and now had an heir. All thanks to humans and their unpredictable, chaotic charm. The chosen human looked up at her, still trembling slightly, and ventured, "So, what happens now?" Zaira floated closer, a playful glint in her alien eyes. "Now you recover," she said, voice melodic, tinged with amusement. "And perhaps, if you survive my species' definition of social grace, we explore companionship." His eyes widened, comprehension and awe mixing with nervous anticipation. Romance, perhaps, had been planted alongside the air, subtly intertwined in the absurdity of fate and cosmic timing. Outside, the first rays of sunlight crept over the horizon, painting the city in soft gold. Humans emerged from their hiding places, blinking at the early morning light, completely unaware of the cosmic event they had participated in. Zyra gave them a small nod of approval. They had been chaotic, ridiculous, and utterly human. And in their flawed brilliance, they had saved her lineage. She allowed herself one last look at the bar, one last pulse of glow, and thought that perhaps Earth was not such a bad place after all. And as she prepared to leave, levitating gently above the rooftops with her accidental hero in tow, she let out a soft, melodic laugh. It was absurd, it was chaotic, and it was beautiful, the perfect combination of comedy, romance, and humanity. The heir was secured. The humans had survived. And somewhere in the galaxy, the exiled princess felt something new, affection for a species that was perfectly, hilariously, undeniably human.